I work for Shopify. We're going to do a small exercise together. I think this is going to be quite fun. Originally, it was intended to be a longer talk, so I had to cut some bits, but I hope you'll forgive me. We're going to do a very simple exercise, and in order to do this, I need 100 random numbers. So I just wrote a little bit of Ruby to generate those 100 random numbers. You don't need to read it. I can see someone on the 4th row intently reading that. You don't need to do that. It will generate them, just like save them to a file, because I want to, keep looking at them a little bit. So if that's a lot of stuff. But if I run this Ruby script, I can check, AV issues? Yeah. Great. Maybe it's my adapter. There we go. Let me know if it goes black and just yell. You see, it generated a bunch of numbers. So if I just check, there's 100 random numbers in this file. The first very easy exercise, usually, there's every exercise can be easy or hard, and this is the easy part. And the easy part is just I want to generate a very simple diagram. I have these numbers, there are 100 numbers. I want to, for each one of the rows, I want to print as many hashes as the number, right? So if you look at the numbers, at some point there will be 7 hashes, 3 hashes, 0 hashes, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna do that. Numbers, each with index, right? So it's like this enumerator. We will create an index and attach it by creating a pair. And once I have that, I can just print the index. And then I can say a hash symbol, that one, multiplied by number. Yeah. And if I run the script now, ta-da! Right? Thank you. Great. So this is the easy part of the exercise, right? So I'm going to make it quite hard, immediately, for fun. And the trick to make it hard is just I'm going to add a tiny requirement, right? So this is top 10 things a product manager likes to say. A new requirement. And the requirement is I want to group consecutive numbers with the same value. It's more difficult, right? I can see these expressions on your faces. So for example, if we have something like this, I'm just going to copy it. We have something like this, and I want to make something not too, difficult, but it's something like this. Huh? Boop, boop, right? Just group them. It shouldn't be too difficult, right? We're professional software engineers. And, I was thinking this morning when I was watching the talk, and you're I remember I was telling my wife about some ideas in software development, and she asked me, well, if I learn this, when will I become good at it? I'm like, tough question. I don't know. I've been trying to do this for a good amount of time, but it's still hard. Why is it so hard? If I try to think how I will solve this problem is suddenly it's not enough to just go through the numbers. I need to keep some state around, right? I need to keep track which was the last number which started this group of consecutive equal numbers, do some work there, and eventually I'll be able to print it out in this nice way. And I'm sure I can do it, right? We're programmers. I'm gonna keep track of this previous number. It's going to be nil initially. And then I'm gonna do numbers each with index, the same trick. Now I can maybe autocomplete this. Thank you. And then, what do I need to do? This is the moment where if it's the start of your day, you haven't had enough coffee, it's going to be difficult, right? I want to basically say that if it's the same number, I'm keeping track of the old number, and now I'm going to look at the new number, and if they're the same, I don't have to do anything, right? It means that that group is continuing. It's like the group of consecutive equals numbers. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to say next, so skip to the next run of the iteration if the previous number is equal the current number. Okay, first problem. Initially, previous number is nil. Okay, no problem. I'm a programmer. I can do this. If previous number. Very easy. Wrap everything in if. And then eventually, I will have to say, the previous number is the existing number. Like the usual. It's like sort of like juggling, but with code. And okay, so like now we've skipped like all these other cases. I can finally print my stupid group, right? Like this is the time where I'm already getting frustrated. I can feel it. And I'm going to say, okay, I need to print the summary of the previous group. So it has to be something like the previous, where that previous group started. But crap, I forgot to track the previous index. Right? Like I really need to know when did that previous group started, but I forgot to track it. No problem. Variables are free. I'm just going to track that as well, right? No problem. All fixed. And then now I can just say, okay, this is the group, and then I'm going to say the same, like presentation logic sort of way, right? Okay, are we there? You guys are too good. So what are the problems? Just yell. We don't have a microphone to pass around. Set the previous index. Great. Yeah. Previous index was completely wrong. Yep. Here we go. Another one. Louder. You only have to set it if the number changed. No, it should be fine, I think. I don't remember exactly which is the version of the code that works, so we'll discover it together. But let's just try to run it, right? Like we have these numbers, and I know that there's like 3779, the last 4. And if I run my Ruby script, no, it's just like wrong everywhere, right? Like there's the same number here and here is not right. Something is just broken. Since I don't have much time, I would love to debug with this, all of you together, but I'm just going to give you the cheat sheet, which is, first of all, we made a bunch of mistakes. This should be the line where we print the previous group, so we have to do index -1. This is the wrong number. It's not number. We should be printing the previous group, so previous number. And do you think now it's good, the code? Yeah? Run tests? I'll come to that. I didn't write tests. Bet on me. But you see, like we had those 4 numbers, right? 3779. Here, it looked like it did something, right? It said 97, 98, and there's like 7 hashes. And then there's a 3. And before that, there's what I think is a 9 and an 8. So it feels like it did the right thing. First of all, it looks really bad. Like you shouldn't see 9090. That's just like poor form, right? And also, we forgot to print the last group. And this is because we were always tracking the previous group. And of course, it gets to the end, and we also need to print the last one, right? So I'm going to first fix this. I'm going to say, if it's just one group, so if previous index is equals index -1. So it means I don't need to print this group. I can just print something simpler. OK, and here I can just say previous index, I'd imagine. Something like this. Hopefully this will look a little bit better. Right, OK, it's getting there, right? It's like it doesn't look as bad as before. But we also need to handle that situation with the last number. So I'm just going to say something that the last index is numbers.length -1. And then I'm going to do this good old copy pasting. I think I want to say if previous index equals last index. I want to do something like this, and I think this should be it. My confidence is like 90%, yeah? Okay, so it's like 99, and just like to prove that the code works, if I go to the end and I repeat a bunch of 9s, we should see this in a group. Ta-da! Right. Let me zoom out a little bit, right? Like this is the output of a professional software engineer or ChatGPT. I've tried many incantations of a prompt to get ChatGPT to generate code that works. I wasn't able, but they got really, really close, and it more or less has the same shape, right? So I think this is like my point. I think Dimitar was mentioning we need tests, right? That's true. And I can imagine we would write some really beautiful tests for this code. But then I think a lot of people forget that after the part where you get the test to green, there's like this refactor stage, right? Where you try to make it so that another human being can read at this code and not just recoil in absolute terror. And I think I don't want to, I just want to spend maybe just a few seconds to look at this and just like in your mind, in silence, just think like all the wrong things about this code, and then we can try to use some techniques from functional programming that I think will make it less likely to make mistakes. Just gonna wait. Okay. I think one of the problems in this code is that we're holding a lot of states in those variables. And a lot of the state is in these variables, and we use these indexes to keep track of stuff. So just as humans, it's difficult to keep all this stuff in our head at all times, right? We just, we can keep two things, one here, and anything other than that, it becomes a bit, troublesome. And here we're trying to do two things. First thing, we're trying to identify these groups of consecutive numbers with the same value. And the other part is we're trying to print out this nice graph, right? So this is like what functional programmers, they go on and on about separating side effects, right? Like whatever you're printing out to a terminal or sending an email or accessing a database or like doing these things which can take a lot of time, that's something that has to deal with the real world. And we all know that the real world out there is quite dangerous and scary. But we can do a lot of stuff before those side effects, which are in the pure world of data. And this pure world of data, there are no side effects, nothing can go wrong, it's just beautiful. So okay, let's try to do something like that, right? So what I would like to do is to be able to separate these two actions. The first part where I'm just trying to transform this list of number in something a little bit more structured, and then we're going to move on to do the nice graph, right? I'm going to comment out all this existing code. And bear with me, the first version is going to look a bit gross, but it's fine, we're programmers. So we're going to create these groups. So I'm going to say numbers. Is it good? A little bit bigger? Oh yeah, because I zoomed it out, yes, thank you. Each with index. I'm going to use another method which is called each with object, which is sort of like reduce, but you can basically pass an initial state, and you can just use it to keep storing data through the loop, really. The each with the index gave us this pair of like number and index. I'm going to call it a pair, and then the second argument of the block is the state. So the first thing I'm going to do is just like to grab this number from this pair of number and indexes. Don't worry why I'm not grabbing the index. Just pretend you didn't see that. And also we need something inside the initial state. I'm just going to say I want a previous number, and it's going to start with nil. And then I want the result of the operation, of the reduce operation. It's going to be called result. And inside here, I can do something very similar to what we did before. I can check inside the state if the previous number is equals to the current number. And if it's so, I'm going to grab the result. I'm going to grab the last group, right? And I'm going to push the pair to the last group. So in this way, we're encoding the same thing we were doing before. It's like, is it still the same number? If it's so, just attach it to the last group. And instead, if that is not the case, it means like the number has changed, right? In that case, I can just create a new group. So I'm going to create this new array. It's going to be here. And the last thing I need to remember to do is to say, OK, I need to revert this. Like, this doesn't look great, but just have a little bit of faith, yeah? And imagine by the end of this, we will have our beautiful groups. Like we have successfully chunked all these numbers like in a good sequence. Now we have the side effects part. We're printing to a screen. We have the groups. We can just say for each one of this group, I'm going to check if the group length is 1. So if it's only 1 there, it means like it's a group with a single element. I can unpack the number and the index from the group first element. And now I can print the usual, right? Which is the index. And then I can print this beautiful hash symbol multiplied by num. OK, this looks about right to me. And if it's not, if like the group has more than 1 element, it means like it's like this long group. And we basically just need to know the first element and the last, right? Once we have those two informations, we can just do the right thing. So I'm just going to copy some code and say, first index is this one. The number is going to be the same, so I can just ignore that. Last index. Last. And here I can just do something very similar, say first index. Well, that's not what I wanted to print. Last index. There we go. OK, I think this should work. Let me just like run it. Like maybe I'll just keep this as a snapshot of what it should have happened. If I just run this, oh, I messed up somewhere. No implicit conversion of symbol to integer. I think this is just because the each with object will return the exact shape of this thing. So actually, I wanted to use result, right? So I'm going to do that and just use result. And now if we run this, ta-da, it should do the same thing. I would argue that the code doesn't look that much better from before, right? It does look a little bit better, but still there's like something which is not great. But I think the thing I want to stress is just that now it's really clear where we're doing this data mangling and like this data shaping, and when we're doing the presentation stuff, the side effects part. And the reason why I want to stress this is because when we're doing these operations in the data world, it's very likely that someone else has done the same operation before, right? It's very rare that someone else was asked to print a histogram where all the consecutive numbers are collapsed like in this nice graph. But it is quite common that someone else wanted to group together a list of numbers, right? That is very common. But you don't have to trust my word for it. I can just show you real quick. I'm going to yank this code, comment it out, and I'm just going to do a couple of things, right? Instead of using this each with object, I'm going to use a new method. Well, it's not new. An existing method in the Ruby standard library, which is called sliceWhen. And basically, you can just decide to, when you have something that can be sliced, you can just tell him when to slice it, and it will do the same thing that we were doing by hand before. So it will give you these 2 consecutive elements previous and current. In our case, we can just say if the first element, which is the number, is different, that's the moment where you can cut, right? And basically, this is exactly what we were doing before by hand. But as I said, like in the world of pure data, it's so common to do these sort of operations. You know, like you want to group stuff, you want to split it back, you want to zip two things together, and there's many methods in the standard library which just allow you to work with these like pure data structures. Once you've done that, I can just remove this code. And I feel like there's something here which is nice, but it could be better, because here I feel like we're doing some of these things. But recently in Ruby, there's this ability of writing pattern matching. And you can just do case group in. And it's very similar to our existing code. I can just say something like this. So if the group matches with just one group, then I can just do this. Otherwise, I can just say that it matches the first index, any number of elements, using like the splatting operator. I can ignore the number because I know it's going to be the same. I can say last index. And yeah, I can just get rid of all this code. Yeah? And just a quick check, if it runs Ruby script, yeah, same exact thing, right? So I think my argument is this: like once you've separated these like pure data operations from the presentation layer, you see, like I'm not really even dealing with indexes anymore. Like all that complexity that I had to hold in my hands and in my head with the original solution is just gone. We can even stop doing things like group length equals 1, right? Like that's like something the computer should do, right? I can just say if the group looks like that, there's one element in it, and it's quite clear that if you want to grab the number in the index, just do it. Right? I feel like in 2023, yes, in 2023, we shouldn't be sort of like trying to tell the computer to do things like in such a, I don't know, annoying way, right? Like it should be like an easier way to just, okay, just do the thing. Like I have confidence in you, right? I'm not sure how much time do I have left. Maybe it's gone.
You still have time.
Okay, good. I think like the only thing I wanted to say is that I catch myself writing this version of the code all the time. I think it's quite normal, especially you're trying to solve a difficult problem and you're sort of bashing your hand against the wall and you're like, I'm gonna do it. And you have confidence in yourself that eventually you're going to write some code that runs and it does the right thing, right? Or ChatGPT emits this code, you paste it, it runs. Okay, time to go home, right? But I think there is some value that to train ourselves, like when we see code which is so like menial and so like full of like these nitty-gritty details, of instead trying to think, well, maybe there is a better abstraction, or a better data structure, or some tools that I could use to just try to unpack this problem. Because this is a problem that we've worked on for like 10 minutes, but we all know like what production code looks like when there's been 6 months of work on a piece of logic, right? It's like very easy for this to become a 2,000 lines file that holds these 6 global variables, and we're all doing. And I don't need to tell you, like what does it mean to be a professional software engineer, But I'm sure, like when you see that and you feel in a place where like there's just too much stuff to hold in my head, I'm getting a headache, I'm tired. I think like that's the right moment where you should recognize that, okay, maybe I just need to see if I can use some of these techniques and like trying to just like, is there something that I can separate? And also in terms of testing, right? We were talking about testing before. It's so much easier to test like in isolation, this part of the code, right? You don't need to send emails. You don't need like a real database. You don't need active record models. That's just pure Ruby data, and you can just create it almost for free. And the tests are going to be super fast. And then you can worry about the side effecty part of the thing. You can have an integration test that runs the whole thing, but you have so much more choice, right? And I would argue, even like when I look at a code that does slice when, where can the bug be in the Boolean condition, right? But when I'm looking at the original piece of code and someone asks me, oh, there's a bug here, I'm like, oh, beep. Okay, so that's, I think, all the time that I have. I'm just going to quickly share this. Like, if you want to just have a copy of the code, you should be able to scan this QR code. And there should be a gist with just like basically the same copy-paste of the code. Yeah, I think it's fun. And you can just try it again. Pretend you don't know the solution and just, try to crack it. That's it. Thank you.